first gift is hunger. It is his blessing. It is our call to bring death. The second gift is death. Death proves our strength. Death purges our fear. The gift is fear. We fear that we fail him. We fear the onset of hunger. The first gift is hunger. It is his...
Hey there, creatures, and welcome to Encounter This, a podcast exploration of the creatures from Dungeons & Dragons and the lore that surrounds them.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Encounter This. We have a bit of a change up to our format again, and James is going to be taking us through a nice themed month of Gnollvember. And yes, you can thank or blame him for that pun. What do you got for us, James?
So first and foremost, big shout out to our Patreon subscribers at the $10 tier who requested Gnolls just in time for November. So I've never found anything that fit as well as this. The second thing I guess we should touch on is, like Freeman said, this episode suite is going to be a little bit different than our normal suites, but very similar to Illithids. This first episode is going to focus entirely on the lore behind Gnolls and how they work in cultures, I guess, is the best way to put that.
All right.
Very, very similar to our Patreon exclusive episode on the history of the Illithids.
Okay, then.
Except that this is going to focus essentially on 5e instead of the whole shebang. So,
All right, fair enough. And just in case there are some angry listeners out there, the intro lacked nicknames, and that was solely James's decision. Okay, I'm angry about it too.
I did make that call, yeah. But rest assured, the other 3 episodes you're going to get this month, that's right, 1 episode a week for all of Gnollvember, will have nicknames, I assure you. I promise you even. And I'm hoping the intro and the outro will make up for that. So let's start today with a quote from Vol's Guide to Monsters, which is mostly where all of this lore is going to come from. There's a little bit from the Forgotten Realms, there's a little bit from 4e, but mostly this comes from Vol's Guide to Monsters. I really wanted to hone in on 5th edition and how Gnolls work in 5th edition for this.
Gotcha.
Gnolls remind the world of the horrors possessed by the hordes of the abyss and the damage that even the briefest demonic incursion can inflict upon the world.
Nothing like a good reminder of demonic incursions.
Absolutely. So that really sums Gnolls up pretty well. If you're looking for the TLDR, like, you can just bounce now, I guess.
Okay. All right. So how do these guys come to be? What? Tell me about this demonic incursion.
Well, like every good demonic incursion, it starts with a demon lord, and in this case, it starts with Yeenoghu, who is the demon lord of slaughter and senseless destruction.
All right, and it's an emphasis on the first syllable. Is that right? Yeenoghu?
I believe so. That's how I've always heard it pronounced.
All right.
Maybe I should stop and look that up.
I always said it was okay, Yeenoghu. Okay, there's a little listener button you can do, and Forgotten Realms. It says Yeenoghu. And it has a little guttural sound on the GH.
Yeah, but the next one says Yeenoghu.
Oh, it does that. Yeah, it does. You're right. Either way,
I'm gonna go with Yeenoghu.
We have a solid history of doing it all our own way. So yeah. Carry on.
Yes, we are gonna go with Yeenoghu for this particular suite. I don't care for the other pronunciation. This is phonetic. I'm fine with that. It's the way I believe Skidmar pronounces it, so that's good enough for me.
That's good enough for anybody.
So Yeenoghu wants nothing more than to transform the material plane into an endless world of fighting and ruin. Remember, we're dealing with the demon lord of slaughter and senseless destruction. And the idea is that when the last battle on the material plane ends, Yeenoghu will finally enter and slay the last surviving champion to rule over the wasteland, because this creature believes that destruction is beauty. Little cliche and on the nose, but it appears to be incredibly true and reinforced throughout all the lore.
Okay.
Yeenoghu is also one of the most active demons on the material plane. By sending their followers' visions, usually in the form of blood splatters or entrail patterns.
All right, then.
Again, this is going to be a very common theme of like shamans of Yinogu reading the entrails of their slain victims, which I think is just gnarly.
All right. So listeners, get ready for a bit of a bloody horror genre theme here.
Definitely. Gnolls are some of the most vicious creatures, I think, in Dungeons & Dragons, period. If not in all fantasy games, which is a little more... I think they're right up there with Redcaps for brutality. So Yinogu will eventually bestow a gift upon its followers. An unquenchable supernatural hunger for both violence and the flesh of intelligent creatures. The giftee? Is that a word? Did I make that up?
The giftee? The as in the receiver of a gift?
Yeah, the receiver. Nailed it. Got it in one. The receiver of said gift feels constant hunger and demands fresh blood, specifically feeding on intelligent creatures, and this only subsides the urges for a short time. The hunger of Yinogu is everlasting.
I always wonder in these sort of stories. It seems like a somewhat familiar story where like a supposed big baddie, Lord of Slaughter, senseless destruction, and they're like trying to achieve that ultimate goal of like you said, was it to slay the last surviving champion, rule over the wasteland? But what then? What happens when everything's destroyed? Do they
admire the beauty of the art? I guess.
I guess. You just said hunger is everlasting. Do they find satisfaction in that in the end? I guess you never really know because it never really happens, right?
I would imagine they would be satiated at that point because the hunger is specifically for intelligent creatures.
All right.
I'm prepared to be corrected, though. If any of the listeners have any insight, you can write in, or you can wait for the Yinogu-focused episode, which will come in our Demon Lord suite.
Heck yes.
Gnolls originate when Yinogu enters the material plane. They go on a rampage and leave destruction and death in their wake, and whole packs of hyenas will follow them and feast on the flesh of the fallen bodies, which leaves them bloated and unable to move. They essentially gorge themselves. Eventually, then, the hyenas explode in a shower of blood and gristle, transforming into what we know as gnolls.
Gross.
Yeah. These gnolls then take up the task of transforming the world into a demonic version of itself, barren and ruined. The idea is the only thing still moving when Yinogu takes over is the withering corpses of his gnolls. So, a little bit about gnolls. They are humanoid, hyena bipedal-looking things. They're hyena therianthropes, I guess is the best way to put that.
Yep.
But I do believe there's a were-hyena somewhere in Dungeons & Dragons, so they're definitely not the same thing. That might be Pathfinder that I'm thinking of.
It was funny because I was doing the research on my section of this month, and I did run into the were hyena thing, and I was thinking about how a little conversation we had quite a while ago about I mentioned lycanthropes in the monster manual. Like, that's not a lycanthrope. I think I was talking about were-tigers. I was like, that's what it says in the monster manual. You're like, no, that's got to be a werewolf. A lycanthrope is a werewolf. And then, so I just like discovered that the other day, and I was like thinking about that whole conversation. But I don't think were-hyenas are in 5th edition specifically.
No, I think you're right. And for the record, the breakdown of that word is lycan means wolf, and thrope means man.
Yeah.
So the catch-all term for were creatures is therianthrope. Dungeons & Dragons is wrong, and they don't want to educate you.
Use that in an email today, guys.
Nice. Good shout-out. These guys are actually a lot bigger than I thought they were. I always pictured gnolls at 5'5", even smaller, stocky but beefy. These guys are 7 to 7'6" tall, 280 to 320 pounds. These things are massive.
That's way bigger than I thought.
Yeah,
I always pictured them as pretty small. Although my only real sort of visual encounter with gnolls is from playing World of Warcraft, and they're quite small in that game. They're very short creatures. Right. So that's gnarly. Yeah, 7 to 7'6". That's huge. How do they burst out of a hyena? The hyena's not that big, is it?
Maybe it is once it gorges on things.
Yeah, I suppose, eh? Oof.
Yeah, they're so much bigger than I thought they were. Whenever I picture a Gnoll, I picture the hyenas from The Lion King, so I just imagine they're about that big, but they're definitely not. They're also very, very fast. I couldn't get a clock on the speed. I mean, we'll touch on each individual Gnoll speed when we touch on their episodes, but as a general rule, Gnolls as a race are very, very quick. And they usually only live up to about 30 years old.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure if that's a natural lifespan or if that's just an average lifespan.
Right, because they're probably more likely to die in violent situations.
Yeah, absolutely. The colorations and markings vary widely throughout the span of these creatures. They could be, yellow, spotted, browns, albinos are known to exist, just all over the place. Blue fur, purple fur, really whatever you want for your own specific warband when you're creating it.
Right.
And they tend to fight with scavenged weapons, so polearms, battle axes, bows, and morning stars are their favorite, but they'll also gnash with their teeth. And every Gnoll embodies strength, hunger, and fear. Strength to overwhelm, kill, and devour. Hunger is its singular motivation to please and satiate Yeenoghu, and fear is their primary weapon to make enemies easy prey. I really like that. I'm not really sure why I fell in love with that breakdown so much, but that's directly out of Volos, and I think out of all the stuff I've read in Volos, I think they do Gnolls the most justice.
Yeah. I've read very little on them, so I'm pretty curious about everything coming up here.
Yeah, so very similar to the Hag Suite, we're just going to kind of break it down, but instead of spreading it between each episode, we're just doing a condensed episode of it.
Right.
So Gnolls also have no sense of honor or achievement. They do not understand anything other than impulse and couldn't act on them even if they did. And they tend to only pause to devour what they kill. They're nomadic people.
Yeah.
Plague, bringing blight across the land. They take weapons and armor from the corpses or fashion them from their bones or found steel or anything like that. And they rarely sleep, which is... I don't know about you, but I find that horrifying.
Yeah. Yup. Nothing like a crazed... someone crazed from lack of sleep, reality gets a bit twisted.
Yeah, so when they do sleep, it's knowing that they have pleased Yeenoghu, so after they have gorged themselves on a slaughter.
Right.
They slaughter, they eat, and then they're kind of satiated from their everlasting hunger for a small period of time, and it tends to only last at the absolute most a couple of days. The outlier feature of these creatures, I think, is that they have very, very strong family values, placing a huge respect on blood and clan ties. So if Gnolls come from the same pack, they tend to be very forgiving of those creatures. So if there's infighting for dominance, it's almost never brutal and very quickly forgiven.
I'm getting like a weird illithid vibe from this. It's not obviously not a direct reflection, but there's a couple of they're not a hive mind, sort of that sense of them being a nomadic almost plague that travels, as opposed to like the illithid hive mind, which sort of sits still. But there's this sense of like you have to look at it as one big entity or one sort of collective problem or adversary that I really like about that.
They really are. I know we reference it all the time, but Wheel of Time Trollocs is essentially what I think.
Right.
I think Gnolls are essentially based on Trollocs. Sorry, the other way around. I think Trollocs are based on Gnolls because they're just this relentless, unthinking wave after wave of creatures who just want to
they're
murder.
They're like I always got a bit of an orc vibe from them, but you're also right. Like they're not very well thought out in their plans. They are just like, bloodthirsty savagery.
Yeah, they're only ever guided by Myrddraal and maybe the Dark One's own hand.
Right, yeah.
Which we'll see is actually pretty reminiscent of Gnolls, to a degree anyway. Mm-hmm. And if Gnolls are ever separated from their pack, they tend to form surrogate packs in which they will form bonds as strong as to those of their own bloodline, which is how we get Gnoll PC characters.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty nifty. There's always a small chance of breaking away from the norm and the mold, right? I always like that, having slight exceptions to the rule. Yeah.
One of the subcategories in Volos is tactics, and I think this is one of the reasons I like this the most is because they outline exactly how a Gnoll warband operates. So the first tenet is to butcher the weak. They deal with easy and weak targets. An enemy that can fight back is an enemy they save for later. They avoid lengthy battles, and if you ever find yourself caught in a Gnoll raid, it is best for you to seek shelter and arm. Hiding and arming is the best way to deal with a Gnoll incursion.
Crazy, yeah. So get out of sight or make yourself a threat.
Yeah, exactly. Because they do not want to fuck with anybody who's stronger than them or can outsmart them.
Right.
When they do, we employ the second tenet, which is overwhelm the strong. So they only attack strong or intelligent prey when directly compelled by Yeenoghu, and in that case they'll gang up on single opponents, rushing them in waves. Eventually they find themselves crawling over their own dead to get to the target. And one of the superstitions is that a common fortress needs 10 arrows for every single Gnoll because it'll just keep coming.
Right.
The third tenet is spread far and wide. So they never settle, though they might linger for a few days to indulge after a raid. Hyenas will follow the packs of Gnoll, feasting on whatever they can't finish, and then those hyenas will explode into more Gnolls to replenish the ranks from the initial raid. The fourth tenet is they tend to kill from a distance. So when they use ranged weapons, it's not to soften the front ranks like they're traditionally employed. Gnolls carry bows to prevent their quarry from fleeing. And a wounded creature is an easier creature to kill, so every now and again they'll use burning arrows or spark fires or to cut off retreat instead of to threaten or put up a wall. They use these ranged weapons in the opposite way that they're traditionally used in warfare, which I think is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's that same tool but very different motivation.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is like a total 180 on how they're supposed to be used or how they're traditionally used anyway.
Right.
And the last tenet of Gnoll tactics is to leave no survivors. So they will never knowingly leave survivors. And they'll pursue a fleeing enemy for days to prevent it from getting onto the next town to warn them. Between raids, they'll use stealth to prevent being detected from other settlements. And if they come upon a settlement that is too well fortified, they'll eventually leave it in search of an easier raid.
Gotcha. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, priority is kill, and that, seems to be taken very seriously. So it really is just like, avoiding conflict that you don't have the upper hand in already, and just killing anything in sight, especially the weak and those who can't defend themselves. It's just about the kill, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. Because killing's how they feed, it's how they satiate their only desire, and it's how they replenish their ranks.
It's how they please their god, their creator. Yeah, so I'm imagining now like a sort of situation in a world where, maybe there was not far in the past a huge, Gnoll incursion, and many kingdoms, suffered from it, and it's sort of dwindled now. And now you have these nomadic bands of Gnolls where each kingdom has to coordinate and collaborate in keeping track of their movements and adjusting accordingly. I kind of like that as a precedent for starting a campaign. Where maybe you're part of a band of rangers that, or maybe someone's a part of a band of rangers that keeps an eye on these nomadic Gnolls in hopes of preventing them from rising again.
That's great. Like the idea that civilization has kind of just been marred and there's only these last few bastions. Yeah,
and like and even then, their sort of cooperation is probably tense and not always very cooperative, if you will. And whatever treaties they have, or what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word? You have like you're in an impasse, or you call a truce. So like you might have a truce or a pact or something like that, and that's shaky at best, because the only reason it brought you'd made it was to defend yourself, a la, a lot of the Starfinder sort of universe stuff with the Vesk, and you bind together to go against this one common foe. But now that it's cowed, you continue it in hopes to prevent it, but everything's kind of shaky, and so you can add a little political conflict in there, as well as the worry of another uprising of these creatures.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I would like to play that adventure, if not write it.
Right? Yeah, that'd be fun.
The next subcategory in Volos is treasure. It's a pretty small one.
Okay.
Because Gnolls have a very rudimentary knowledge of value, and they only hold value to useful objects.
Okay.
So weapons or armor, in which case they might be able to come into a valuable object by accident, like +1 Great Axe of Frost or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In which case that would probably be worshipped.
So in other words, they don't see any value in like gems or coins or anything like that. None of those sort of commodities that humanity would treasure.
And to that point, cautious opportunists will every now and again follow behind a warband from a safe distance just to collect treasure from the ravaged civilizations.
Fucking scavengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
The trophies that Gnolls do take tend to be like bones or skulls or pelts or stuff like that. Stuff they can wear and show off, but nothing like precious gems or gold.
Yeah, something intimidating. Something that might make someone think twice about picking up a sword to defend themselves.
Exactly. We get back to their nature.
Mm.
And Volos touches briefly on languages as well, because Gnoll is actually a language.
Right. I did notice that, yeah.
Which consists mostly of whines and cackles and howls, which is mixed with gestures and expressions. So while researching this, like ASL came to mind, kind of a mix of that with like military hand talk is kind of what I picture. Because in sign language, your expressions do most of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to imagine a human communicating in Gnoll, and I guess you found a decent way of compromising for that, but also like whines and cackles and howls mixed in. I wonder how like important those are. It almost makes you wonder why there aren't more languages that can only be learned by certain sort of specialties. Like that to me sounds like maybe only a druid or a nature domain cleric would have this, or maybe a ranger would have this sort of insight to be able to correctly use that language.
Yeah, I agree, and I would definitely limit this to PC language in my campaigns for sure.
Yeah,
but I guess to the point that it's a simple language, and I think maybe it's easier to pick up because they only use it to communicate basic concepts like alert or help or a target or attack or feed, like that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I would see no problem with, say, having someone be able to maybe give full access to, say, the three I listed, and then limited access to others, like where you could recognize or understand, but maybe not necessarily speak it, in relay in that language. But you could recognize, listening in and getting an idea of what they're conversing about, at least.
Right, like the pitch of the howls and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you're unable to perform them yourself.
I like that. And kind of the way around that whole thing is that Gnoll leaders communicate using Abyssal. So Gnolls can understand Abyssal, but they can't speak it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Regular Gnoll leaders can, in fact, speak Abyssal, and that's what they use to communicate complex ideas. Is a broken form of Abyssal, and that's given to them by Yenogu upon their ascension to like one of the alphas of the pack.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So it's like yet another gift to those in charge.
Yeah,
it's not something they learn.
No, they don't learn anything, really.
Fair enough. Not even no lessons, eh? No lessons at all. It's kill or be killed, and that's it. Yeah, fair enough.
And the next subtopic we're going to talk about here is allies. But first, this episode, as with every other episode, is brought to you by our ally, Strange Fellows Brewing. Specifically their Blackmail Stout.
Blackmail Stout. The Blackmail Northwest Stout, they call it for some reason.
It's probably the hops involved.
All right, well, these guys like to kill. They don't like to learn lessons. What else they got?
Well, they have a lot of different kinds of creatures that join them along the way. The first are cultists to Yenogu, which are just insane.
Yeah, I was literally going to say, so insane people.
Correct. And eventually, when this suite finishes, I hope you'll be able to tell how insane they are.
All right.
There aren't very many of them. That's probably to be expected. Mm-hmm. But they do reflect Gnolls' beliefs and actions. So they tend to have a lack of hope, have fallen into some sort of anarchic belief, disparity in the system or the leadership or something like that, as well as having suffered a loss, possibly banishment from their homes, betrayal by a friend, that kind of stuff. Like, these people are, I don't want to say rock bottom, but that's probably the best way to put it.
Right.
And that's when Yeenoghu comes in. They infect this creature's thoughts with dreams and omens and visions, promises of power, threats of brutality, signs of strength, like that kind of thing. They really just get in there and pitch what this creature wants. If that isn't enough, Yeenoghu's gives them the sense of belonging. Mm. So those that accept Yeenoghu's offer are considered Gnolls themselves by the packs.
Okay.
And they quickly set out to commit actions of blood and annihilation, usually end up getting killed by city guards or watches, but some escape to link up with a warband.
Now, do we know if there are like certain races or ancestries that are more likely to fall into this category? Is it humans? Humans, yeah. Not. What about orcs? Do you think orcs might fall in there once in a while?
I definitely think it's possible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't rule out any creature. Like, everyone has felt alone and betrayed.
Okay, now I officially want to add in a tribe of Gnolls when doing air quotes, but they're all halflings. Just these tiny little warring little humanoid creatures just freaking out, and the Gnolls love them. It's just, yeah, comedy episode in the nomadic Gnoll campaign.
Comedy gold, I would think.
They're all convinced they're Gnolls.
They would be, yeah. They would smell like Gnolls, and they'd be accepted, except their feet might be a touch hairier than a traditional Gnolls, but I can't speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty cool that they are accepted in as a Gnoll or a part of the tribe or whatever. Because, I mean, you said they have the strong family values of the blood ties and that sort of thing, you know, yeah. And what is it you said earlier about, did you cover that? But the surrogate packs, they become separated, you know, it all sort of lines up and falls in. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic I think Gnolls have, and one of the many reasons that I really like these creatures is that, you know, they are a bloodthirsty, impossible way, very similar to zombies, but they're also pack creatures, very similar to like very intelligent wolves. So they're,
I mean, they clearly they're clearly operating on a lot of instinct, you know. So it's whoever shares the views or the instinct, I guess. Is who they coordinate with, and that's how how they work as a pack, you know.
Yeah,
and because they don't think too far beyond what they are on an instinctual level. It seems, you know, they are what they are, and that's what they do. And anyone who is like that is part of it, and they don't think about it beyond that.
I wonder if that's less D&D lore and more like hyena stuff.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. I don't know much about hyenas myself. I'm reasonably sure they do hunt in packs to a degree, but
they're definitely pack animals. There's an episode in the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where Xander gets possessed by a hyena spirit. So he's very, very loyal to the pack, and they're very, very vicious to everything outside the pack. So
gotcha. All right.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where that comes from. I have no bearing on whether or not that's true. There's a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer that's inspired, or if not directly taken from pop culture, and this could just be one of those things that they took from D&D.
Yeah.
Or it could just be real world. So if you are a hyenaologist, probably not the name, but
sure
it could be.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Or if you happen to be a were hyena.
Would you be aware of the hyena part of you? Isn't that one of the symptoms of lycanthropy, or that you don't remember what happens to you when you're a werewolf?
Yeah, I guess you don't. Yeah, that's fair. But you are you not aware that you do have this condition? You just don't know they don't have the memory of when you fully transform? Oh, that's a good question. Never thought about that.
In traditional werewolf lore, you do not.
You just wake up naked in the field covered in blood on every so often.
When we're talking about Lon Chaney Jr., that's pretty much what happens.
Yeah. So you know something's wrong, but not what.
But I think in more modern day tellings, like I'm thinking of the werewolves from Underworld, they know.
They're fully aware.
They have to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so write in if you're a were-hyena. Let us know.
Yeah. we would be very curious if you knew you were a were-hyena.
Yeah, super.
You might turn us into budding cryptozoologists.
I think we are already budding cryptozoologists.
Except I don't think we actually believe the Loch Ness Monster is out there, or that werewolves.
I don't think cryptozoologists do either.
Some of them definitely do. That's
right.
Sort of their thing.
Some of the other creatures that attach themselves to warbands are demons. Mm-hmm. There is a creature in the upper echelon of a pack known as the Fang of Yeenoghu that is sometimes gifted with the insight to summon a demon. Specifically,
I hate this one.
Barlguras, Dretches, Hezrus, Mains, and Maw demons.
Okay.
I'm sure I fucked all of those up. Don't write in.
That's more or less how I would have said them. I always pronouncing a demon creature or a name is so messed up.
Yeah, but Yeenoghu will give Shusuvas to the most exalted in a pack. They're usually given as a reward for conquest or brutality. They protect warbands, most powerful members, and they tend to be a companion to the strongest Fang in a warband. So there's usually 3 or 4 Fangs per warband, and the best one gets a Shusuvas.
And they're like a hyena-looking demon themselves.
They are. I think they've got a scorpion tail.
Yeah, crazy.
They're really neat.
Really loving the chimeric creatures, eh?
Yeah, definitely with demons for sure. Other creatures that tend to attach themselves are ghouls, which I thought was absolutely insane. Oh. So every now and again, a pack of ghouls will give up their service to Orcus and turn to Yeenoghu because they just want to slaughter and feast on the remains of the slaughter, and they can eventually merge their way into a warband. The rear guard, I'm sure, but still part of the warband.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
One of the other creatures that we'll touch on more specifically in the suite is Lucrotas. I think that's how it's pronounced.
I was going Lucrota, but I don't know. The double T makes me want to do the short O as opposed to the long vowel.
I think you're right there, Lucrota.
Yeah.
They are actually one of Yeenoghu's original creations, which we'll touch on at a later date, but they are bigger, faster, and smarter than Gnolls, which I believe is going to be very important. I've actually got out of my way not to dig too deep into them, knowing that that's an episode you're going to be taking on. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually quite curious. Having doing the research on having been doing the research on them, wondering like where the intelligence of Gnolls lies. And I know there's like various CRs and levels and versions of Gnolls, but I've like you gone out of my way to not look at them. So I'm very curious about those comparisons, those upcoming comparisons.
I am too, for sure. But when a Lucrata joins a warband, it doesn't attempt to lead, even though it's bigger, stronger, and smarter. It tends to protect the leader. Mm-hmm. Because its dedication to Yeenoghu is as strong, if not stronger, than any Gnoll.
Right, yeah. And I can't wait to talk about that when we talk about Lucratas.
Awesome.
I have some thoughts on that for sure, but we'll definitely save them.
And the last creature that's likely to join a warband are trolls. And they are actually most likely to join because the pure destruction really appears to their nature, and they're ravenous and tough and insatiable, and they just want to murder things.
Right.
Like, I love the idea of just this pack of like flesh gnawers and like a troll in the vanguard, like just taking on the city walls. I think that's such a cool image. And then in the back, you just see like hundreds of gnolls and like a bunch of shambling ghouls. Like, this is terrifying.
Yeah, seriously. And they just like, you're getting attacked from one side, and all of a sudden an orc warband comes in.
Exactly, yeah.
With their siege weapons and stuff. You're like, come on.
Absolutely incredible.
Call the tree ants in. We need some stones thrown.
Yeah, and they would too, right? Like, you could also use trolls as ranged characters. Like, there's so much variance in creating like your own army, essentially. And I love that.
Maybe you can get some stone giants on your side. They're neutral.
Yeah, probably. Other than that, there's not much. There are some very valuable charts in Volo's Guide to Monsters that I wanted to touch on. They're found on page 39 to 40. There's one where you can roll to name your warband. So like dire mongrels, rotted mutilators, howling harbingers, like these really brutal, like 15-year-old boy names that I love.
Oh, okay, sorry. I have to stop you on that one. Harbingers. Like harbinger of death? Yeah, not harbingers.
I think I'm hearing the same word.
No, you said harbingers, not harbinger. You got the soft G in there.
I still don't really. Harbinger?
Harbinger. A harbinger of death. The howling harbingers. Yeah.
Harbinger. Okay. There's also a commonalities table where you can roll for stuff like piercings, whether or not they're albino, if they ritual scar themselves to mark themselves as part of a particular warband.
Okay.
There's also some really interesting behaviors, like maybe this particular warband uses nets to take captives. Maybe they're magically controlled by a spellcaster.
Okay.
Also, like, there's a demonic influence table, which I didn't really understand. So I think it might just be like foreboding. So things that happen in either the wake of one of these warbands or the preceding one of them, like terrible storms, fits of madness, food and drink spoil, that kind of stuff.
Crazy. It makes you think of, like, you say the behaviors and the carry and spread of disease. Like, it almost reminds me of, I feel like it's a bit of a Lord of the Rings, the orc bands and stuff. And I think some of them, like you would have ones that were infected with the disease and then they're named appropriately. So you say like the rotted mutilators, for example, maybe then they're probably just as vicious as the next warband, but maybe they have like leprosy. And they kind of look like, maybe the withering gnolls, but are not undead. Right. And but their skin is like falling off. They're constantly in pain and they're rotting and stuff like that. Yeah. I like the idea of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really do see. I think that is Lord of the Rings. I don't really remember a whole lot about the orc tribe specifically, if anything.
Yeah, I
from
don't
those
either.
books.
Yeah. I think I having. It might be coming. Some of this might be coming from a video game, Shadow of Mordor, that I played, and where they have a lot of like warband leaders and stuff you have to like hunt down. And I think they kind of organize themselves in certain packs. Yeah,
that makes sense.
But regardless, I think I like the idea. Whether it's inspired by that or not, I think it's really really cool how you can sort of combine those various things and very quickly create unique imagery for individual warbands.
Yeah, they're super useful charts, and I recommend them to anybody who's building a warband from scratch. Like, it's probably the most valuable Gnoll resource out there, as well as Guide to Monsters. And the last thing is, I guess, Brief History of Gnolls, an anthropology
Anthropophagy?
Anthropophagy and emeralds from Wales to Wisconsin and beyond.
That's a hell of a title of a book.
That's the subtitle. This book, A Brief History of Gnolls and Anthropophagy and Emeralds from Wales to Wisconsin and Beyond, is a couple of essays by a man called Paul Haney, examining the literal history of Gnolls. So between D&D and Pathfinder, I think World of Warcraft is the only other main place that they appear, comparing them to them being published in this other book that we'll talk about in a future episode, which is the first introduction of Gnolls, which is absolutely mental, by the way.
Yeah.
These essays were published in 2010 by Skirmisher Publishing, and they're currently available on Paizo for a few bucks. I think they're like $3 Canadian, so we'll have a link to those in the show notes. That will not be an affiliate link.
Okay, cool.
A lot of words to say, very little information.
That's fine.
But that's going to do it for the Gnolls lore episode. It should be
All right.
a nice, quick little dive into.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the next bit for sure. I like the way they're set up. There's a certain beauty in the simplicity of it all.
Yeah, so I guess the best way to describe it is I've started building an army for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So I've kind of laid it out, this suite out in that way, where you have your general lore and information about the army, which is kind of what you read before you start building it. And our next episode is going to be leadership, which will touch on all their HQ, which are the warlords, the pack lords, the fangs, and the flins. The next episode are kind of like associates because they're very much tied to Enogo. And then the last episode is our army builder episode, where we'll touch on all of the troops and the general infantry and that kind of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Nerd things on nerd things.
Can't wait to build my imaginary new Gnoll campaign as we go.
We'll also touch on the Gnoll campaign that I did actually build.
Oh, sweet. Sold.
But that's going to do it for today, listeners. We hope you enjoyed Gnoll lore, and we'll see you next week in Gnollvember for leadership.
Day 2. The subject continues to growl and struggle despite the removal of its arms and legs. I will let it starve for a few days to weaken its mental fortitude. If the Gnoll does have some sort of tie to the abyss, I must keep my focus on exploring that link, even though the creature's mind might remain aware.